Good morning, my tired accursed out there this Friday morning. Meet a tired band of pundits and analysts here on The Curse of Politics. 1 week from today, we will be surveying the wreckage of this campaign, with E-Day being next Thursday. Today, Jenni Byrne and Scott Reid are here against their better judgment to entertain and inform you. I'm here due to contractual obligations. Allison Smith from Queen's Park today is here because she loves the smell of napalm in the morning. Allison, how are you?
Good morning. I am well. I was singing.
What's the news today?
Yeah. Well, Doug Ford was out. He held a rally last night in Hamilton where he told the crowd he was going to paint the town blue in 2022. And he's out in another rally today. He's going to hold a rally in Kitchener and has another one planned on Saturday in London, I believe. So that's the point of the campaign he's at, rallying the troops in, Andrea Horwath's turf. So that's pretty interesting. Stephen Del Duca, he's going to talk about the Highway 413 today out in Mississauga, and then he's going to be visiting some mosques in Brampton and also in Mississauga. So he's staying in the GTA, but isn't promising any big news necessarily, because we already know he wants to stop the 413. Andrea Horwath is meeting with frontline workers in Scarborough, and then she's also going to go out to Hamilton. Yesterday was an interesting day. Aside from Doug Ford's rally, we got Horwath and Del Duca really, or at least Del Duca really pulling out the knives for Horwath over a candidate nomination situation. And basically called her sexist, not basically, full out called her sexist or misogynistic, the NDP as well, for going after their candidate for what looks like electoral fraud. So that was a little bit surprising coming from Del Duca's camp, but I don't know what you guys think about that.
Nothing looks desperate about a big, weird-looking man with a Walmart vest that looks like a box calling a woman sexist. Nothing desperate about the campaign at all. Nothing seemed that way.
Yeah.
I have a lot more to say about this, but
me too. I don't need to do it. You guys, I'll let you hand you guys that baton. But
Allison, I have an observation from your newsletter this morning, which has been in my inbox for precisely 30 minutes now. Mm-hmm. Your quote of the day, I'm going to call it up so I make sure I quote it directly. Your quote of the day today is by Doug Ford, and it is, here we go. I love this quote of the day. Just don't put me in a square box with this conservative group. I'm Doug Ford. That's it. I'm Doug Ford. That's it. It's like, he's Lady Gaga. Don't attach your labels to me. Am I an actress? Am I a singer? I don't know. I'm all that and more. I'm just Doug Ford. Don't try to understand it. Just love it. I thought it was a pretty sweet quote.
Yeah. Says it all, eh? Our good old Etobicoke North cipher. Yeah.
Allison, is this my Twitter feed's ablaze with somebody getting arrested at a Ford event or ticketed and removed and charged with trespassing? Mm-hmm. I don't see any reference to it in the actual news. I saw a fleeting reference to it in your thing. Is this news or is this just on Twitter?
So I'm not sure how to pronounce the woman's name, Karima Saad. She, I guess, is a citizen journalist. I know she spent a lot of time at the convoy, tweeting what was going on, but I really don't, I have to confess, I don't really know what her deal is. I know that she was among a few people who weren't allowed in Doug Ford's kickoff rally in Etobicoke back at the first day of the campaign, including like a Rebel News reporter. And I believe they weren't allowed inside. And so I'm assuming she tried to go yesterday and wasn't allowed inside and apparently wasn't allowed anywhere near the place and got arrested. So I don't have a ton of information about why 4 cops dragged her into a car, but that's all I know right now. I'm sure she'll tell us though. she's usually has a lot to say. But
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Allison. Thank you.
You are
Very
welcome.
helpful. You enjoy a well-deserved weekend, and we'll see you for the stretch run on Monday morning.
Sounds good. Politicstoday.news for a free trial of Queen's Park today or any of our other political newsletters.
Excellent. Thanks.
I have it. Free. Free's good.
Jenny, Scott, how are you?
Good.
Hanging on. Just barely hanging on.
Jesus.
That's probably
You guys are
Same.
bringing the heat. Bringing the energy this morning.
I'm
We're bringing the energy this morning.
I'd say
To
I'm
a
happy for the
solid
weekend,
rock.
but weekends seem the same as weekdays. So
Yeah, no, you've lost your right to have weekends. You gave that up.
yeah, which is fine.
I thought yesterday was the weirdest day of this
Oh my
election campaign.
god!
Like Foursquare weirdest day, right? Like, you got this event. Like, let's dive into this event that the Del Duca. Like, I don't understand how with 8 days to go, and I'm not clear where we're at on this campaign. Like, is Del Duca firmly in second place and has official opposition under his arm? Is that up for grabs? It feels like it's
not according to the secret.
not according to the secret memo.
Confidential NDP.
Yeah.
Honestly, the Star needs to they can't believe they're actually they must kind of snort and titter while they're writing this. Like, there should be a disclaimer. The Toronto Star does not believe these are secret or confidential.
And by all means, I want to jump into that, but I just want to say on this, like, why would you, as a Liberal campaign, why would you burn a day having the leader accuse the female leader of the NDP of sexism, no matter what the backstory is, no matter what, but it appears as though signatures weren't correct on these forms. This is replacing the replacement. This is the candidate already had to step down. This is the person who stepped in. It's in Chatham. I got a news flash. The burning bush has started to speak, Liberal campaign. You're not winning that riding. I don't know why you would piss a day away accusing the NDP leader of sexism. That's not going to help you draw NDP votes.
I reckon that whether you're a Hurley-Burleyite, a member of the accursed, or both, you are in an unusually close relationship with your smartphone. I'd go further and bet that at least 50% of our listenership has a couple of phones. I don't judge. However, access to a smartphone and a data plan is not so easy or affordable for all Canadians. And it's a critical aspect of the digital divide our presenting sponsor, TELUS, is working so hard to bridge. TELUS Mobility for Good started in 2017, offering free or heavily discounted smartphones and rate plans to youth transitioning from foster care, so they could stay connected to their support networks and take advantage of other opportunities for the next stage of life. Since those early days, the program's been expanded to offer free or subsidized phones and data plans to low-income seniors and other marginalized Canadians who need the support a Lifeline brings. 13,000 people to date have been able to take advantage of the program, with 7,000 added in just this last year alone. TELUS's goal? To more than double that number to 30,000 by 2025. They'll get there too. How do I know? Because it's part of TELUS's many ESG commitments, environmental, social, and governance. They measure those commitments, publicly report on those commitments, and take action to get them done. You can read more about all of it in their sustainability and ESG report at telus.com/sustainability. Here's what happened yesterday is the fucking Liberals did an announcement on long-term care. And they picked a fight not with Ford, but with Horwath. And the NDP did an event on hallway medicine. And they picked a fight not with Ford over his record or about his promise from 2018 to end hallway medicine. They picked a fight with the Liberals in Del Duca. And Ford's getting profiles written about him.
Yeah.
Right? Puff pieces. So this is what you see in the news, is this argument today between the Liberals and the NDP about who's breaking the law and who's sexist, and Ford getting puff profiles from people he didn't even agree to be interviewed by. And we're in that phase of the campaign now.
Well, we're in the phase of the campaign because the NDP and Liberals have finally realized they're each other's opponent. If they could have actually had a more coherent strategy or coherent message against each other if they hadn't waited for so long to actually do that. I don't think it is a surprise to anyone on the pod. It's not a surprise to me. It was kind of assuming after a week of this campaign that is where it was going. The Liberals, though, like Del Duca sounds like at least Horwath can have a message. You can say Del Duca was part of a government for 15 years and what have you. The Del Duca message was just extremely bizarre. And I think that it is a campaign that ultimately is melting down internally. If what happened in Chatham-Kent in terms of using the former candidate you got rid of signatures to now, that is sloppy fucking operations. That is ground operations. If someone in my organization did that and I found out about it, it would be like, get the fuck out of my site. Like, it is so sloppy and so not necessary, because getting signatures, you got to pound the pavement, but people are generally willing to sign nomination forms for any candidate, regardless of whether they're going to vote for them or not. So what we are seeing now is a campaign that seems to be, if they were in free fall internally, it's now making its way externally, because there was nothing sexist about that. Del Duca looked like an idiot yesterday.
You made the point. You were so emphatic about this the other day when we did the live event, the Board of Trade, Jenny, about discipline. And it's an obvious thing, but you really dove into it and went into some detail, talked about different sorts of discipline and the importance of discipline. Discipline is even more important when your campaign is feeling strained. When
Yes.
when you're in this kind of knife fight, with 7 days to go. And I just thought yesterday was a real example of indiscipline on the part of the Liberal campaign. Why the leader in Chatham would go out. I mean, and I don't even, forget, I agree with you about all the signatures and stuff. And I don't even know what the backstory is, and nobody will pay any attention to it. But the fact that the clip of the day is not going to be on what your message of the day was, but your clip of the day is instead, you were going to be calling the NDP leader sexist. If you've concluded that you've got to direct your fire at the NDP. First of all, that tells us something about what they think about who's second and third and where they're going to try to get their votes. And it tells us that this thing is a white knuckle battle between the two parties. But it also, if you're going to make that your message, then make that your message. There's nothing that's going to cause an NDP voter to say, you know what, I think I'm going to break Liberal because I heard this, because I saw Stephen Del Duca calling Andrea Horwath sexist. And you just don't have the luxury of getting angry about whatever you got angry about yesterday and saying it to the microphones. It's a waste of energy, waste of time, waste of a day, and it didn't help.
Would they have done it deliberately, Scott, to deflect from the story? I mean, were they that worried about the third candidate having to? Is it a third candidate? Or
second candidate, but you shouldn't be. If they were, that was ridiculous.
They're down 3 candidates.
You're going to blow
were they so worried about a third candidate withdrawing?
I don't think so.
You're going to blow your province-wide shot on a riding you have no chance of winning, even if you had your first candidate?
David, he was way too emotional for it to be what he like, and also then a strategic complete flop. Like there's no way they were that worried. I don't see it. They also listen. I think yesterday was good work by the NDP War Room. They had the wherewithal to call through those signatures and find 4 people who said they did not sign the nomination forms for the current candidate. Not sexist, stupid and sloppy by the Liberal Party. And then they also pushed out counter to a poll that Kate Graham ran in London North Centre, saying that she was sitting at 44%, and then highlighting the fact she put out a poll in 2018 around the same part of the campaign saying she was sitting at 44% when in fact she got 15. So I actually think this was great war room. Like, that was the NDP war room. There were small victories or moral victories. They threw the Liberals off an entire message day, and it was really insightful stuff.
And I thought the memo, the substance of the memo was risible. But look, if I'm looking at the physical Toronto Star this morning, Horwath is the picture and the headline on the front page. Inside, there's another whole page dedicated to her and her memo. So, I mean, in a world of little battles, you have to sort of say, hey, it got the job done. So, that's obviously Balugas and those guys, sat back a few days ago and said, how do we retool? And there's some evidence that they're doing. We're going to throw this thing out. We're going to generate some hits from our war room. Obviously, they've decided to reorient their message all around healthcare. It feels to me like it's all like today she's frontline workers, which I assume is going to be PSWs. Yesterday was all hospitals. So they've decided that they've sort of zeroed in a little bit. I'm not seeing that from the Liberals right now, and they can't afford to piss another one of the few days left away in the way that they did yesterday.
I found the weirdest part of the article on the NDP memo was the unnamed conservative source breaking into them. Like when you've got your opponents fighting with each other, going back and forth, why do you like break in to actually to talk strategy? You're like, no, the NDP numbers are wrong. We have the Liberal numbers right, and we're going to pick up seats, and we're going to win York South-Weston, which is of course where Michael Ford is running. And I've heard they've got a ton of ground resources. I've heard they're doing what they need to do, but it's still a seat where I can't actually remember for the configuration of that seat the last time a Conservative has won it, both either provincially or federally. So it's you hit that time when it's like it's time to do strategy and not talk about it. It's that seemed in reading that article, it was like when I read the first sentence, I was like, what the fuck is this?
In a lot of respects, time's up, right? Because Scott, tell me if I'm wrong, but when you go into a last week of a campaign with an outcome that is as widely understood as this one is, the media start to shift their focus, don't they? To retrospectives on what happened in the campaign, to looking forward to what the government's going to be like and who might get what ministry jobs. And they just move on from the election.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. And so... the only substitute alternative is either conflict, which we saw yesterday from Del Duca, which is counterproductive, or horse race, right? So you have to have a new horse race. So you get a poll story, the NDP try to generate their internal memo, that sort of stuff. Pick a couple ridings. So if the Liberals, you sort of go, hey guys, for your weekend stuff, like here's 5 ridings where here's some we're going to go hard in terms of inside the tent stuff on 5 swing ridings. This is why they're in play. This is what's going to happen. This is how this is going to, these are the 5 that will make the tail of the tape between whether or not we regain official opposition. You have to do stuff like that to keep them on the campaign, as you say, as opposed to start talking about stuff like, start changing their tense. It's when the stories start to lead with election was interesting, now it's over. Then you got a problem. And we're getting close to that territory with, 6-7 days left.
Solve the housing crisis by building more affordable homes. But not in my backyard. This is the mantra of a small but vocal group of Ontario residents, including municipal councillors and groups, that are more concerned about protecting the appearance of their neighborhoods than they are about ensuring all Ontarians have a fair shot at home ownership. Our original sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association, says NIMBYers, or not in my backyarders, are standing between the dream of home ownership and Ontario families. There are solutions that can help solve this crisis, but we need everybody on board. Outdated zoning laws only encourage NIMBY forces to fight the building of affordable homes and keep them out of growing neighborhoods. The result? More and more Ontarians have no shot at owning a home in the community they grew up in. Ontario needs to use the Planning Act to implement as-of-right zoning, beginning in urban municipalities, to create equality when it comes to home ownership and bringing down the cost of living. 40% of Ontarians believe that zoning restrictions in municipalities is the main reason why not enough homes are being built to sustain our current population. In 1 week, Ontarians go to the polls to elect the next provincial government. The housing affordability crisis needs to be at the top of the agenda when MPPs come back to Queen's Park, or else the dream of home ownership could disappear for an entire generation. You'll be hearing more from Maria about Ontario's housing affordability crisis and what can be done to fix it, because Aurea believes that reforming exclusionary zoning practices will have a big effect in ensuring we have a home for everyone. Read Aurea's plan at ahomeforeveryone.info. All right, so we have seat modeling projections from Greg Lyle and Innovative Research Group today.
Okay, that's going to be interesting.
All right, give it to us.
Based on the data you gave us earlier in the week that he had?
Based on, I'll tell you, let's be clear and transparent about this. There has been so little movement in this campaign that to get reliable clusters, he has bundled up all of his interviews from all of May.
Okay.
Into this sample. So it's very large sample, and the results have been so stable that it's a reasonable thing to do. He has, I want to say, different model forecasts than I've been seeing out there. And so for my NDP friends who are listening to this show, I want you to tell you that this is from Craig Lyle and Innovative, not Herle putting the old thumb on the scale there.
That guy Herle, he always chat for the Liberal. He always again the NDP.
He has broken them up in a super interesting way. He's broken them up into riding clusters based on historical patterns of whether they are ridings the Conservatives, Liberals, or NDP always win, whether they're ridings the Liberals always won and the NDP won last time, those kinds of things. So overall aggregate numbers, Greg says 76 Conservatives, 29 Liberals, and 18 New Democrats.
That's what I would have expected kind of at the outset of the campaign, to be honest. But
and Schreiner wins his seat back, obviously.
Yeah. So let me give you a little color about this. So his main point, if I could summarize it, is that the problem with the New Democrats is not Toronto. They're actually holding their own against the Liberals in Toronto, in his view, and seat-wise. Their problem is that Ford is devastating them among working class and rural voters. And so the Southwest, in particular, is really bad, he says. He says the Ford lunch bucket strategy is paying off in spades and stealing NDP votes. So let's look at an example of that. So he's got a cluster of ridings called Consistent NDP. Okay? These are ridings 18 ridings in the province, that in 2014, the NDP won all 18 ridings. In 2018, the NDP won all 18 of these ridings. And in this election, Greg Lyle thinks that the Conservatives are going to win somewhere between 4 and 14 of those ridings. Yeah. So he says basically the pattern is the Liberals are going to, he says, take seats from the Conservatives in the 905. Not necessarily many, but there will be Conservative losses from 2018 in the 905 to the Liberals. And it will be more than made up for by NDP losses to the Conservatives in Southwest and Northern Ontario.
Okay.
So is he saying between 4 and 14? I assume he's saying less than between 4 and 14 for those.
Could be as many as 14.
You're saying what?
Gosh.
Sorry, because between 4 and 14, is he saying there's a chance that Del Duca could win up to 14 seats in the 905?
No, that's different. 4 and 14, that was the
I know, but
18 seat.
Yeah. No, I know, but they'd be made up with for Ford winning. For Ford's NDP gains make up for the liberal gains from Ford. So what I'm asking is, what is what are the numbers between that he's saying for the Liberal wins in 905?
Us talking math is like watching a donkey knit. This is hilarious. Wait a second. No. I understood that. But you said it traded. You said you traded 4 to 14. So does that mean 8? And wait a second. Where's the decimal?
There are 13 seats the Liberals won in 2014. And were within 15 points of the Conservatives in 2018. And he expects the Liberals to win somewhere between 8 and 13 of those ridings back.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It's interesting. I thought it was very interesting that Del Duca's choosing to speak today about the 413 in the 905. And I think that's interesting because logic suggests that means that he's using an appearance in the 905 to try to win votes with that issue, to try to win votes and appeal in 416, like make news all across CP24, have it running all the time, and try to fortify his appeal to NDP voters in 416. which makes you think like he is concerned about the NDP votes in 416. So that would be consonant with Greg's analysis.
But then do you not worry that you're turning off potential Liberal voters when you're campaigning
I do,
against?
But I do, but they've got a different read on the 413 than we do. I mean, I don't know if they've convinced themselves that they can make it a winner in 905 as well as 416, but
like close to 50% of voters have no problem with the 413 or have no problem with making constructing more roads to drive on. Those are 905 voters.
Yeah, maybe they only care about the other half of that equation and getting more than their fair share of the NDP votes. I don't know. I mean, the 413 I think is something that merits a case study after this election. I think it's been an interesting piece of the jigsaw puzzle, how it affects and when it affects, and we won't know until election night.
Well, as we've talked about before, even the NDP last week, I think to counter the 413, you had. I think Guratan Singh on behalf of the NDP and the Peel candidates for the NDP in Peel went out and said that they support taking off tolls for truckers on the 407. Like that's a pro road like that's so more people get off the other highways. Truckers get off the other highways. They can use the 407. So I think obviously the NDP were hearing it at the doors, which is why they made that announcement.
They certainly felt the pressure and around affordability stuff where they're talking about gas tax and so but it feels to me like the NDP campaign has ratcheted down to where it's focused and what it's focused on, and it does feel like they're going to concentrate on healthcare. And I wonder if this projection by Greg tells us a little bit of why, right? That they're anxious. I would think that in southwestern Ontario, you got older voters who are anxious about healthcare, the availability of frontline healthcare, and so they're going to kind of keep hammering away on that, and then pound away when they can in the 416. But Greg's analysis is more pessimistic than a lot of stuff that's buzzing around. Like, just to be fair, right? I know because I'm the NDP representative, so let me just make the point here. There's a lot of buzz all of a sudden, and I don't know what's bullshit and what isn't, but there's a lot of buzz all of a sudden that official opposition is in play, that it's going to be a game of inches between the NDP and Liberals. And there's the NDP memo, which says we're coming on like gangbusters. Nobody's detected it. Nobody can detect it. It's sort of like what's on the other side of a black hole. We have not yet developed the science to measure it, but we are coming on like gangbusters. And, this suggests that that's not the case, but, it's going to be an interesting last week, but it's mostly going to be an interesting last week to see if A, the PCs do anything to get in their own way, or if they can maintain cruise control, because they are firmly on cruise control right now. And B, what happens between the NDP and the Liberals. Like if they keep going at each other, it's an awkward thing for them to go at each other, because on the one hand, you want to go at one another, but that isn't always necessarily the best way to harvest votes from one another. Sometimes, particularly, I think it's harder. The NDP can attack Liberals and not pay a price with progressives in the same way that if Liberals attack New Democrats, we pay a higher price. And there's the male-female dimension on top. There's the gender issue on top of it, as got obviously heavily focused yesterday. So it's a little trickier for the Liberals. How do you hit the NDP but draw their votes? It's a little bit more complicated.
The only way you can go at the NDP is strategic vote. The only way the Liberals can go at the NDP is to poach their vote. And the problem is that, if there was a consensus around these numbers in the province, that would happen. But there's not a consensus that this is what the result is going to be.
Which might be why it's a good idea.
If you're the NDP and you're looking at the prospect of not just losing the election, but of losing a third or more of the ridings that you've won in the last two elections, that you won in 2014, and that you consider part of your core in the North and in the Southwest, it gets a bit existential again. It gets a bit core again. Do they have to leave Toronto for the last week and go down to the Southwest?
Well, a friend of mine, I mentioned this a few days ago, and so this is days old intel, but a friend of mine who's a New Democrat said those downtown Toronto candidates already feel like they're running independent island campaigns. And it's such a community unto itself inside those neighborhoods that, those New Democrats are they almost run off of personal brand and downtown networks of, workers and progressive alliances and all that sort of stuff. So maybe the NDP can afford to do that and not pay as high a price as we might assume. Maybe their provincial campaign can focus, their central campaign can focus on other regions.
Well, I assume that despite their fake memo to the Star that talked about the overall provincial number, that they're actually polling riding by riding or region by region to see actually where they're at. And then, David, I think it depends. Like if the dogfights are in the 416, they stay in the 416. If they're not, like, where do they have the best chance of keeping the seats? So if you're looking at those 18 seats that you could lose, you're looking at what are the top 9 or 10 that are most likely to save. And that is where you focus your resources on. You have to make, they're tough, gut-wrenching decisions, but you have to fucking make those decisions. They should have made them before, but they have to make them now if they want to keep. If you sprinkle your resources out to all 18, you could lose all 18. So that's why you've got to concentrate.
Hey, Jenni, I bet $100 that you're better at this than I am. So when you're deciding which of those ridings to prioritize, are you just going off your polling tracking, or what other data inputs are you considering when you assess which riding is more likely to hold than another?
How much does ID voter factor into that? Will you go, well, this is a better riding because I know I can harvest? It's
a huge factor. You've got to look at it. Can't just be polling. So it's polling, it's voter ID, also local resources on the ground, and there's other local factors. There can be issues that come up. There can be issues that come up or that have been front and center that can actually bring in a point or two. Like, that's what you're doing. It's not just polling. You're bringing all of it together. And making those decisions.
Let me ask you one other question.
So when
Jenni.
this campaign started, Greg Lyle told me that his numbers told him that the NDP had a much better path to beating Ford than the Liberals did, and that he thought they had a better path for the election than the Liberals did. And when we were talking last night about this, I asked him about that, and he said there was so much space in Ontario for a Bernie Sanders campaign out of the NDP against both the Liberals and the Conservatives. And that was the path. But the NDP campaign that has been run, he, in his view, just didn't capitalize on the potential that existed for them at the beginning of this thing.
Yeah, that's possible, like a Bernie Sanders populist type campaign.
Yeah, but I mean, I've made this complaint before. Other than the City TV debate, name me a time during her entire tenure as leader where Andrea Horwath, walked out to the barbecue and came back with a perfectly cooked set of steaks. It just, so it doesn't, it hasn't, I don't know. So I'm not looking for her to pull off that stuff. But I do think that they seem more dialed in. And we can make fun of the memo, but I go back to it. Like, we talk about whether it's managing media expectations. So you get the memo, you get a full page in the Star, you start to throw chum in the water as to who is and who isn't in the best position to form official opposition, which, as you say, David, is wise insofar as maybe it blunts the ability to pull the strategic vote appeal for the Liberals. So it's a preemptory move that makes it less effective for the final few days.
Yeah.
I just think I see evidence that the campaign is tightening its strategic focus this last couple of days. Whereas yesterday was, I think, a lost day for the Liberals. So they better get their game on, notwithstanding Greg's numbers, which tells them that they have the whip hand, but they better hope.
All right, it's a Friday. No need to drag this out unnecessarily. Jenni, do you have a blessing or a curse?
My curse would actually be to the NDP and the Liberals. It's time, based on this conversation we've had, it's time to pick a lane. You've got to decide for the next week. You've got less than a week left. You've got basically, I think, a day left of advanced voting, and then you have the big day. Pick a lane as to where you're going to go and stick with it. And not everyone in your war room is going to agree with the lane that eventually is picked, but everyone has to stay on board onto that lane. To make it as successful as possible. So I'm shouting out to the opposition, pick a lane, and we will see if that happens. When we talk on Monday, we will know which lane the parties have picked. We'll just see later next week if they stick with it.
Right. Scotty!
My blessing is to Doug Ford. I think...
And it's a blessing.
and it's a blessing. But I think in these last few days of the campaign, you're seeing some really interesting stuff, and it's not just. I made my Lady Gaga joke earlier, but it actually like actress, singer, all round performer. He's campaigning in Hamilton. He has Indigenous leaders praising him and characterizing him as a different kind of conservative leader, one that allows them to actually work with him collaboratively. He's got unions, private sector unions, endorsing him day after day. And so I look at all of that, and then you see Doug himself wrapping that up and saying, hey, man, I'm not a conservative. I'm just Doug Ford, baby. I'm just like, don't try to understand it. It's just kismet. And I think it's not just helping them win this election, but it's creating a definition of Ford that surpasses the benefit he got from COVID, and is sort of saying, here is my stand apart, stand above, stand alone sort of definition as an Ontario Conservative leader. I think it's really interesting. I think it's very beneficial to him. And as long as they don't get cocky and overreach, it's going to make for an interesting post-election scenario, because they're trying to move into different territory. You look at where they're campaigning. Like in Hamilton, I don't think they're just fucking with the NDP. I think they think that they can make inroads. It reminds me in 2014, David, where you said, we're going to Caledon because I think we can push up. I think we can push north of the GTA. I think we can push outside of the Golden Horseshoe Rim and start to pick up seats. I think that's where the PCs are at right now. I think they feel like they are really on stride.
Yeah, for sure. Good ones, both of you. I'm so tired of howling into the void about this thing. I'm going extremely micro. I have a friend, Allison Smith, running in Oakville, and Premier Ford is there today. So, Allison, that means you're in the hunt. Good on you. Keep fighting. Work hard for the last week. All right, everybody. I want to thank our presenting sponsor, TELUS, and our sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association, or OREA. I want to thank Scott and Jenni for being here with me again today. And by God, you accursed. We love the fact that you tune in and say hot shit to us on Twitter and go to Apple and give us a rating or a review, one way or another. Give us some feedback. Love you all. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.